And recording. And 3, 2, 1. And welcome back, everybody. Here we are again with Kris and with Alyce.
Hey, Happy New Year, everyone.
And this is the first recording for the Todd-Cast for 2025.
Yay. We're still here.
As of this recording, this is...
It's not running.
Oh, of course. We're still in the Todd-Cast, the opening page, because I can do the slow fade. Watch, I can do slow fade, and we can do that, and boom, there we are now.
Well, I meant the timer isn't running.
Oh. Because, that's a reason to stop.
Well, because we won't shut up.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Once again, it's me.
Yay.
It's Kris. It's Alyce.
Hey,
and here we are.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
This is the first recording for 2025 of the Todd-Cast.
We're still here.
We are here once again on YouTube, and we are now on Spotify. Yes, indeed. And I'm hoping we're not glitching out too bad here. It looks okay for right
Yeah,
now.
I think so.
It looks
It's
okay.
happy.
We'll see. Watch that careful, because it could be that. But tonight we have a rather particularly special episode, at least for Alyce and I, but actually for all three of us, because we all three at least have some connection to what we're going to be speaking about tonight. And that is the National Western Stock Show.
Woo. Big deal in this time.
It really is.
That's right.
Yeah.
Which, as of the date of this recording, on January 5th, it kicks off in 6 days.
Yes, it does.
Yep.
Yes.
January 11th is when Stock Show opens. The kickoff parade will be Thursday
It's
on
always
January 9th.
Yeah, Thursday before.
Yep. And what that means is that they're going to do a quote-unquote cattle drive.
I'll fill y'all in. It's actually pretty fun.
Because, just like they did back in the day with apparently all the sheriffs and the
They would run the
wagons.
cattle down 17th to get down to National Western Complex. So
right,
Yeah.
and all the wagons and everything, and
it's pretty cool.
the
I'll tell you all about it.
all the Western airs and everything, just like they did back in the 1800s.
Except now it's big, tall skyscrapers and...
Actually, really pretty.
But tonight we're going to be discussing all things stock show and all things to do with the stock show and everything involved with that. And I think the best thing to do, tonight is start with a little history. And with that history, we're going to be going and moving into the round table of discussing stuff.
Okay.
And let's see. Now, before I had this split up into the three of us, of Kris goes first, Alyce, and then me. And Kris has asked that we don't do her first tonight. So I think we're going to go ahead and do a little history. And Alyce, do you want to kick off the history part?
Well, I'll start off with it. Like, it's started in 1909, I believe.
06.
06, sorry. We're 119 years. But it has been a Denver tradition to have this region be host to all of the farmers and ranchers in the space to come regionally into one spot to actually sell their stock. And along with that, there's a rodeo, and there's trades, and there's trading that happens. There's a lot of business that happens this 2 weeks. But this is, I guess that's a very surface level way of going with the history. I know you've got a little more to share, Chuck, but that is where National Western began. It's a very long tradition here in Denver. One of my favorite traditions with it is that the grand champion steer stands in honor, along with the second place guy, in the Brown Palace, which I think is amazing. It proves that Denver's a cow town, because the fanciest hotel in downtown Denver hosts two bovine in the middle of its lobby, and you have high tea right next door to two big old bulls, and it's amazing, and I love it. And they're treated like royalty, and there's a big old thing. But anyway, that's one of my favorite traditions of stock show, but other history, go for it.
I was just going to say, those show cows and bulls, they are so pampered, and they have a blowout right before.
That's my favorite part of the barns.
I know, and they're so fluffy and clean, and
well, I mean, they're show cows, but they are for either breeding or those two are for breeding.
But they're beautiful.
They're beautiful.
You're so used to seeing them, in the barn or in stalls or out in the meadow, where they're just, cattle. Yeah, themselves being themselves. But after they've had shampoo and blow dry and all the things, they just they look like cute little, not little, ginormous stuffed animals almost. Yeah. Particularly like the Aberdeen Angus with all of their long hair.
Yeah. So that's what the little bit of the surface level start of it, but you've got probably more to share with the history because that's your jam. You like to look at that sort of stuff. So
yeah, okay, yeah. Once again, my sister's outed me as the history geek and that I am, and because I am. So yeah, there were a couple of events before the actual stock show really kicked off. In 1874, there was the Denver Bloodstock Association's Bloodstock Fair.
Blood on the sand.
Blood.
And blood all around.
Blood.
And stock and blood and things
not
like
as
that.
in like they bled them. It was
it was genetics.
Genetics.
Yeah. It's all about breeding, and it's all about the breeds and how they are doing purebreds and things like that, and thoroughbreds. This show involved showing the thoroughbred cattle divided into 5 groupings of purebred cattle: the Shorthorns, Herefords, Devons, Jerseys, and Ayrshires, or Ayrshires, however you want to pronounce it. And Galloways, along with all of them. They also did a horse racing thing at that first one, and there was a little bit of a background on that. This show was the first one that they did, of course, and you had anybody and everybody, and it was open to the public and free of charge. There was no fare or fee or anything to get in.
You said 1874?
Yes.
So this is before we became a state.
Yes, it
This
is.
still under territory.
Yes, it is. Exactly. So there's a little bit of that there, and the first one, the main issue that they had was there were a lot of arrests.
Well,
okay, because you had that many cowboys show up into town doing
tomfoolery happened.
Yeah. Shenanigans were afoot,
A little tomfoolery. Those things were.
Yeah.
There was some ish.
There was. Yeah, there was. Anyway,
we're the Wild West, might I add.
Yeah.
So they took a break after that.
A few years.
So they took a break, and then in 1899 they did the second annual session of the National Livestock Association.
25 years later.
And can I interject? In 1881, the Denver Union Stockyard Company was founded.
Yes.
In the site where the stock show complex is.
Yeah, the
now.
stockyard. That was the establishment of the stockyards.
Yeah.
There you go.
You got it. And it's all established there because that's where all the railroad.
That's right.
Railroads met.
Still
as
there.
well as the rivers. And so.
If you know anything about Denver and you know anything about Globeville.
Yes.
That is where the rail yards are.
If you would like to put up a map.
I will do an attempted map here.
It's right there. So kind of
and I hope
day
that
where
that's
it's at.
showing you exactly where the rail yards are versus where the stockyards are versus where the stock show is happening. And you can see Union Station there and all that. And yeah, boy. Okay. Also in January of 1899, the second annual session of the National Livestock Association was held in Denver under the auspices of the National Exhibition of Range Cattle. Was held at the same time. Unlike most livestock shows, this show only range cattle were exhibited. So we weren't necessarily doing all thoroughbreds this time. We were doing range cattle.
Range
so this
cattle.
is
And no horse, no sheep, no goats, no pigs, no.
well that to a certain point. Yeah, this is mainly the classifications of the yearlings and the 2-year-olds, 2-year-old steers, and calves of 2 divisions, northern and southern.
Mhm.
No breeding or full blood cattle were shown. So this was not about having or making or buying a cow to make more baby cows. This was all about cows for food.
Mhm.
This was all about the actual purpose of raising these
For beef.
animals.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is a big part of our economy.
Mhm.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
beef, it's what's for dinner.
Dun, 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 dun.
I don't have that
You
one.
don't have rodeo? How un-American of you.
No.
Not have Aaron Copland's rodeo at the push of a button.
Well, I'm sorry, but I've got the Mandalorian.
Okay.
Uh,
That's equivalent.
Sure.
Well,
Got
space
that.
space western
Okay.
versus
Yeah, I was going to say
you
it's
know.
kind of got that twangy feel to it.
In fact, I'll talk about that this Thursday.
Okay.
Super.
Thursday.
More history. Keep going.
Okay. Anyway, the 2 other events around the turn of the century included livestock exhibits, the Denver Fat Stock and Feeder Show, which met in Denver sporadically between 1899 and 1906, and the Festival of Mountain and Plain, which included cattle exhibition or exhibits between 1895 and 1903. Now, unfortunately, yes, I am making that a side note about the ish that happened during these times, because that was the reason why it didn't really get a big kickoff
Oh, I'm
that
sure,
early,
yeah.
or even in our territory days. And the reason was because
A lot of
the jails got full.
pew, pew, pew.
Well, no, not a lot of that. It was a whole lot of I'm gonna get drunk and go. No, there was no shooting. There was no shootings, but it was
Maybe a lot of punching and maybe
a lot of
some
screaming, punching,
womanizing.
and womanizing, and riding the cows down 17th Street.
Sure, why not?
Ironically, that's the route of the parade.
Yeah, it is. Well, yeah, we'll talk about the
Yeah.
parade in a little
Yeah.
while. But yeah, and going and taking over the Civic Center area, literally taking it over.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, sure, why not?
So, yeah, and then Coors got involved at that time,
course.
and yeah, it
Banquet
was
beer.
yeah,
Right.
because there we are. So that's where that happened.
Did you see anything in your research? When I was doing my research, they talked a lot about the foundation being around pigs, but I always remember it as being cattle.
It was cattle.
Okay.
It was primarily cattle.
Yeah.
Swine did come into play as a major role a lot later. Well, okay, a lot later, like around the 10s and the
Okay.
1910, 1920s.
Okay.
At least that's from my reading.
Yeah.
Okay? That's
But
don't
yeah,
come at me.
I was surprised when I read that, and it was seemingly a reliable source, and so I thought,
Yeah,
I
didn't see anything about
Okay.
swine being that important.
I didn't think so, so I was kind of surprised.
Not
so.
till the 4-H really got involved.
Mm.
And 4-H was really into the piggies.
Well, and I
Really
was thinking that's
pigs.
more of a Midwest thing. I think of Iowa and
Oh, okay.
Kansas and things.
That's not necessarily true, because the ranch area just to the north of my grandfather's old place.
South of them. Grandpa's. I was on the south side of 56, where the pig farms were.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I thought that the pens that were on the north side were pigs as well.
Maybe they were, because that's where the guinea pens were too.
Yes. Yeah, that's the ones I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember the ones on the south side.
Yeah, because Gene was over to the east,
Mhm.
and then on the north side,
Those terrible birds.
we got chased by guinea hens.
Scary. I have trauma from guinea hens. They're terrible. Them and emu is an ostrich. I don't like any of the tree birds.
The terror chickens.
They're so scary. We'll tell a story. Continue.
That'll be, but not tonight.
No,
that'll be.
We'll do a short on that one. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
we will.
Terrible.
Anyway, okay. Let's see. Special Pullmans came in from Chicago and Kansas City and Omaha. 4 breeds of cattle, Angus, Galloway, Herefords, and Shorthorns, were shown in 1906. In total, 351 cattle, sheep, and hogs were shown in the 1906. And it was a very respectable beginning for the first
because that's
stock show.
Yeah, probably what we know it as of today was.
Yes, this is talking about the stock show now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see, when Denver Union Stockyard Company
Mm-hmm.
was purchased by the National Packing Company, George Ballantyne, the Denver Union Stockyard Company's general manager in Denver, became the stock show's major underwriter.
Hmm.
And this is where a little bit of our family history kind of
Starts.
wiggles in.
Yeah, kind of comes in.
Our great grandpa Roberts,
he was a partner in the Denver Livestock Feeding Company. So, and I'm not sure what year it was established, but I'm sure it was a long time.
I would hazard to guess maybe the 30s or 40s.
30s or 40s probably, because grandma was 12 when they moved here from Kansas.
Right.
And yeah, so it was probably then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my guess.
Side note, our grandma was the first graduating class from West High School.
Ta-da! Okay. It was then apparent then during the 1906 show that it would be a success. A big success. So the Western Stock Show Association formed and incorporated as a not-for-profit company.
Mm-hmm.
It was a non-profit.
They still are.
Mm-hmm. To this day, the WSSA is the legal entity behind the National Western Stock Show memberships. Behind the National Western Stock Show. Memberships were sold in the early years. Excuse me. Boy, the editing's going to be fun on this. For $5 per year.
Wow.
Or $50 for a lifetime.
Not that anymore.
No, it's not. Over half the memberships sold were lifetime memberships. Today, only lifetime memberships are sold. Guilford Pishot or Pinchot. I can't remember how to Pinchot.
Sorry.
We've
butchering your name.
We've mutilated it, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We will put it right here so that you guys can mutilate it yourselves. The head of the Forest Service was in town for the conventions and joined at that time. So in the beginning of 1899, National Exhibition for the Range Cattle Railroads would create a special tariff for stockmen and stock heading to the stock shows in Denver. For example, in 1927, the Western Passenger Association would issue a special excursion fares from stations in 13 states to Denver on 20 different railroads. So basically, it was to
get them in.
Yeah, just to using the word tariff is a little bit of a misnomer, but it would be a discounted fare.
It's a discounted fare, yeah, because that's how they got all the stock here back then. They didn't drive them on the big old trucks like we're used to seeing now, or on the trailers. And especially
in the time that we're talking, it would have been a cattle drive.
Yeah,
and it would have been
a long time.
Yeah, so it would take weeks for the cattle to get here.
The discounted fare was a really smart way to make sure everybody got here.
Mm-hmm. In 1907, the Western Livestock Show would be renamed the Western National Livestock Show, and the arena for which the livestock would come to show was extended to the 99th meridian. Oh, the area from which the 99th meridian was, so just about mid-Kansas.
Yeah. Like, we'll take you from here to here.
Right.
This is reminding me of the Hallelujah Trail, where they...
Oh, no, I see it.
Now, let me just... thanks. There, now I see it.
I got to do it right. Oh, now I see it.
What are you saying?
Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, just the thought of we're going to set up these fees to slow them down so that we can get to Denver in time. And
Yeah.
Then there was a dust storm.
and then
And all the cattle growing shaggy like never before.
The buffalo are feeding ravenous. The beaver are working something fierce. Horses and dogs are growing shaggy-haired like never before.
so
If
There
you
you
haven't
go.
seen the movie,
Oh, it is the best. It
well,
is so good.
well,
It is so good.
if you see the movie for the first time in 2025, there's some stuff that didn't age well.
no, it does. No, it
but
does not
it's
age
so
well.
Good. They're trying
It
to
is
get
definitely a
liquor.
period.
They're trying
piece.
to get illegal liquor into Denver
That's right. Illegal moonshine or whiskey.
during
Sorry.
the
Whiskey.
Prohibition, and they have
Oh no, it's not during Prohibition.
It was,
No, well, because
Well,
they were
before.
trying.
temperance. It was the temperance.
Yes.
movement.
Because it was like
Temperance,
they had
yeah.
all the ladies.
I was
that
going
were
to
all
say they had the
temperance
temperance ladies trying to create the prohibition, but we weren't
ladies. It was
there
so
yet.
funny. It's
Yeah.
such a good movie.
Yeah, because this is before 1900.
Yes,
So good.
but yeah, either that or Blazing Saddles, where they set up the little toll thing where you had to pay a dime to get to town.
go back into town and get a
Beep.
beep load of dimes.
Somebody's got to go back and get a load of dimes.
All right. Let's go.
All right, moving on. Sorry, just we were getting way too bogged down in history. I had to lighten the mood.
That's what we're doing here. Okay. Anyway, where was I?
Setting up tariffs. Which
We
is
have
what-
discounted fares to bring the cattle. Go.
Okay.
Move
One of the
forward.
most important livestock events in the National Western began in 1907 when the carload class was established. This class involved the exhibition, judging, and sale of 20 animal lots.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's not just individual animals,
It was a
it's
whole lot.
20 animals
Mhm.
at a time.
wow. Okay.
Yeah. These classes have continued through the years in several simultaneous iterations as carload shows, truckload shows, and pen shows of at least 3 to 5 head. That's what the pen shows were.
Mhm. And they have for frame of reference, there are pens in the back.
Mm-hmm.
They've modified that now with some of the new construction.
Right.
Where the pens used to be, they've been moved, but they're also now going to be indoor pens
Oh,
Right.
nice.
with
Okay.
some of the new construction.
And
So,
there is a series of auctions that they do that they will bring in these groups of animals
Mhm.
into the auction area.
Yeah.
And watching a livestock auction, that's some theater.
it's
It
yeah,
really
That's some
is.
theater.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fun.
it's fun.
That's a lot. I had a great time, and I remember being very, very little and having my grandpa sitting on his lap
Yeah.
and being told, "You keep your hands down.
Don't you move. You don't move.
You don't look at
Don't
anything but
sneeze,
the
cough,
cows.
Don't wipe your
You
nose.
don't do anything." And the reason is because all of those are signals to,
Buy $1 million cow.
yeah, exactly. And I can just imagine the look on my mama's face.
No, Grandpa would have been like all of his fun words.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say the blue
So.
streaks through the air.
And your mom just like, oh no.
The first draft horses were shown in 1907 when horses were introduced into the livestock shows.
Cool.
In 1907, the primary location for the show moved to the hill, immediately east-southeast of the stockyards.
Mm-hmm.
There were other changes. A 2-story brick horse barn was built, and a new canvas big top was purchased for use on the hill, and that was where they were holding primarily the entire livestock show.
Mm-hmm.
Two other events around the turn of the century also included livestock exhibits. The Denver Fat Stock Feeder, which we talked about before, which met in Denver sporadically between 1899 and 1906. Festival of Mountain, blah, 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 blah. We already talked about that a little bit. Yeah, the Festival of Mountain and Plain, which included cattle exhibits between 1895 and 1903, and drunken debauchery happened and a lot of arrests. The Silver Jubilee, we're going to jump to the 25th anniversary. 1931 was the Silver Jubilee for the 25th anniversary year of the National Western Stock Show and Horse Show. So that's how they incorporated it or put it in as well for the horses. In recognition of this anniversary, the National Western introduced rodeo to its visitors.
Wow, we didn't have rodeo until 1931.
That's right. That's right.
Such a big
Wow,
part of it.
it
now.
is.
Yeah, because I mean, it's the Super Bowl rodeo.
On the PBR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the Pro Bull Riding Association.
Yeah, because there's a lot of those that if you want to qualify for a buckle in PBR in
you got to go
in
to
the nation,
National
Yeah.
Western.
you've got to qualify at National Western.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's one of 3 events in Colorado that you must qualify at.
I didn't realize that.
Oh no, 2 events in Colorado and 1 in Wyoming
I would say,
Mm-hmm.
because
Greeley
it's National
Stampede.
Western, the Greeley Stampede,
and then Cheyenne Frontier.
and Cheyenne Frontier Days. Let's see what else. Where was I? Now the stadium arena was home to livestock, horse, and rodeo events. Now the stadium arena is not the Denver Coliseum.
No, it's across the.
Yeah,
Highway.
it's on the north side of I-70. The Coliseum's on the south side. They're directly across the street from each other, or across the highway from each other.
Yeah, now they have an underground tunnel that connects them.
Yeah, that underground tunnel was established when the Coliseum was built.
Yes.
That was in the 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. Since then, the National Western Rodeo has included most of the great contestants of rodeo, human and animal.
Yeah.
2 of the greatest horses to appear in the National Western were Midnight and 5 Minutes to Midnight.
My mom talks about seeing Midnight.
Mm-hmm. They drew spectators to the rodeo in the 1930s.
No, I don't think when she saw Midnight, it was still competing, but
No.
it would come around, so it was cool.
Oh yeah. Well, the stories about Midnight were just unreal.
Bronc rider, right? Bucking.
Yeah, he was a bucking horse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
He was rough.
he hurt people.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
that
That's what
animal
makes him
hurt
famous.
people. Let's see. One of the events started, and it's Catch It Calf. In 1935, Catch It Calf program began for the 4-H boys competing, now known as Catch a Calf. It's one of the more popular events in the rodeo and livestock show. In 1974, girls began to be able to compete in the program as well. After the construction on the hill during the livestock show's early years, the main buildings used by the stock show would not significantly change for many years.
No kidding.
And
You've
actually,
never been
that's
in them,
true.
you know. Sure, you know.
That's true, because in 1989 is when all the major updated construction occurred.
I mean,
Well, and it was in the mid 70s, like when the Hall of Education was built.
mhm.
Mm-hmm. But the finalization of all of that was in 1989.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, it
excuse
was
me.
a decade long project.
Yeah, the secondary arena
Mm-hmm.
that they established over there,
Mhm.
which honestly I like better.
I think it's
I
beautiful.
like that place.
It's cool. That's where all the
I like
horse
that
events
place.
happen.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
Mhm.
It's beautiful. 1939 construction began on the WPA concrete barn just west of the stadium. It was completed, listen to me, in 1941 in time for the 1942 show.
It's pretty amazing considering a war was on at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As a side effect of increased machination of farming interest in as a side effect of increased machination of farming, interest in draft horses began to wane.
Makes sense.
As a result, draft horse competition would leave the horse show in the early 1940s because everybody was getting tractors, so we didn't have draft horses to pull things anymore. Let's see. As it did in World War I, the stock show would continue during World War II. All of the 1943 profits would be invested in war bonds.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All of the profits during World War I were given to the Red Cross.
Okay.
Quarter horses started to be shown in 1944. 1945, stock show would be a history maker. Entries filled the facilities. The show would be expanded to 9 days. Nearly 400 junior steers were sold in auctions in the yards on Friday before the show even started.
Mm-hmm. I
So
think they still continue
still
that
do
the
that.
junior auction
Mhm.
is the Friday before.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, essentially, the stock show is started this week.
Yeah.
It's just not open to the public yet.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
This is where all the big money starts changing hands.
Yeah, yeah. Because
You
when
know.
I worked at the stock show, we'd start the week
The
before.
week before I was
Mhm.
when I worked it, I was already working.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
My point about there's connection here. Okay. Another first happened in 1945 with 2 bulls
Here
owned
it
by
is.
Dan Thornton, selling for $50,000 each.
In 1945.
That's
Yeah,
big money.
that's
yeah.
huge. They would be stalled in the lobby of the Brown Palace Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
This tradition continues to this day.
Yep.
When the champion and reserve champion junior steers are shown in the Brown Palace in the lobby on the day of the auction of the junior livestock champions.
And they have high tea going on
Mhm.
directly next door.
With a bull
With,
right there.
there and
Yeah.
them not
Yeah.
fasting the animals. So guess what happens?
Yeah.
Just saying. I think it's
Oh, yeah.
hilarious. It from an animal care professional standpoint, I think that is the funniest thing in the whole wide world. It cracks me up.
Well, I'm sorry, but I would love it.
I think it would be amazing.
Because, this
I'd
big
be
old
like, Sophie,
yeah, but this big old bullhead nosing at you.
What
and
you got?
would you like a finger sandwich?
Yeah,
It's cucumber.
and yes, I would. Thank you. Yeah,
I think it's amazing. And it proves that Denver's a cow town.
right,
We're always a cow town.
and
And that's what we are. We're going to be that forever.
just having high tea with the bull.
With the bull.
Right there.
The fanciest hotel in Denver.
That's
Yeah.
right. I'd love it.
I think it's
I would
amazing.
love it. Anyway, so that's where the big chunk of my early history ends. I'm going to jump to 1972, and the reason that I got to tell this story, I think it is the
Well, I
most
wasn't
interesting,
Earth.
weird story ever.
I wasn't on Earth yet.
In 1972, a champion steer was
Crowned.
yes, and was shown. Unfortunately, it was about, I'd say, a few months after that this champion was crowned that they found out that it was a fake.
Oops.
It was supposed to be a black Angus steer. A beautiful animal. But they used shoe dye to dye the fur black and dye the whole
Wow.
animal black.
Why? Because Black Angus are more valuable? Okay.
A lot more money. And his name was Big Mac. Yes,
Of course.
after the sandwich.
Sure. Why not?
But Big Mac was, and I can't remember the name of the breed, but it was actually a white. It was a white cow.
You would think in the 70s they wouldn't use shoe polish. They would use actual hair dye.
I don't.
Because shoe
yeah.
polish would just come off on your hands.
You would think.
I mean,
You would think.
if you've ever seen a show, they're all up on them. They're like,
Oh, yeah.
doing everything,
right.
and it's
And
like
they're going
in
through
their-
the
fur, and
and-
they're in their
yeah.
teeth, and like it's just
Making sure they're intact.
Yeah, I mean, whatever they do to dogs is what they do to these big
Yeah.
old animals. It just, how did that not? you know,
Right.
how'd you get away
Exactly.
with that?
Either it was a very good deep dye job.
I guess.
I don't know,
Or
but
they changed their tactics.
it could be. Or they started doing all of
Yeah,
that
because of
after
you know,
1972.
I wasn't around, so I don't
Yeah.
know.
It would- I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I was going to stock shows, sure,
You
but
guys weren't there for that
oh
part of it,
no,
though,
no,
so
no. That was again
yeah.
auction that we didn't participate in. And Chucky, you keep your hands down.
Well, we were allowed. I mean, so moving forward, the history of it in Denver is long and storied, but it's also very long and storied in Chuck and mine's family existence because of our great grandfather. But it was also something that we would do every year for fun. Like the middle weekend, we would go to stock show.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
we would, school field trips, we would go to the rodeo. There was always a
Mhm.
school field trip. The first graders would always go to the rodeo.
Indeed.
Very different than my experience.
I didn't get to go my first grade year.
We did for mine.
You did for yours.
Yes, we
and
did
I
for
remember going with you.
Yes.
I did not for mine. I can't remember why. I think it got snowed out or something. Just typical.
Likely, yeah.
But it was very, very deep roots in our family of going. And one of the things, and I'm going to kind of jump into this because this is what I do at the stock show or any livestock thing I go to, fair, whatever. I walk the barns. I love walking the barns.
Yeah.
I love going down and looking at the stock. I don't necessarily really care about the exhibitry or even the rodeo, and I have a story about that. Because National Western Stock Show Rodeo has a very deep root in my health journey.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
But we would walk the barns, and it was like you talking about getting them a blowout. Dawn and I would love to watch those cows get blow dried.
Oh, and they love it.
They
They're
loved
just
it, and we would like laugh at it, and they had the pink sponge curlers
Yes.
in their fur, and we would use the pink sponge curlers in our hair, and we would laugh about that. And then you know, Grandpa would be like, you know, if you want to touch him, you got to ask. And you know, like learning proper etiquette around other people's animals, we learned at stock show. So we'd ask, and we got to pet, and you know, you'd learn that cows are big cuddly things, and that they love to be cuddled, and like you could love on them. It was that is the best part of stock show to me, is to walking the barns. I love it. That's what I do.
And I'm going to talk about a memory, and I'm not really sure if this is a true memory or not. And Kat will correct me if it's not correct or if it's not right. But I do remember Kat's first experience meeting a cow, and she got to pet its head, and it bent down for her.
Yes, I remember that.
Closed its eyes while she pet the muzzle and pet it between its ears, and that little Angus calf just loved her. You know, and
they're ginormous.
Yeah,
but they're
but the
cute.
owners were just enamored with the fact that this little blonde girl, you know,
In her character magnet
and
ponytails,
her
probably.
pink Western shirt
Shirt
and
and her
pink
boots.
boots, and
Yes, she needed the pink cowboy
that
boots.
was all that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what we would do with stock show. My mom loves chickens. Comes from my grandmother, so we'd always go up and check
chickens and ducks and
ducks
geese
and look at the fowl. We'd always go to that part of the
And
show
the
as
rabbits. She
well.
liked
And
those.
the rabbits.
yes.
Our childhood was to go to the education hall and go up to the kids section and watch the water park for all the little ducklings.
Oh, wow.
And they had their little slide, and they'd be in
They
the
had
little
a
pool.
Ferris
And
wheel.
they had a Ferris
Oh
wheel.
my
and
God.
the
A
Ferris wheel would
slide.
take them up to the top of the slide.
Right, and they jump off,
bounce
they'd
off the slide
slide
and
down.
slide down into the water. And three of us would stand there for hours and watch the water park for the little ducklings. It was the best part.
That's
The
not
duckling
still there,
water
is
park.
it?
I think they try and keep it in tradition because it is such as if you're a Colorado kid
I don't
going,
remember
Yeah.
ever seeing that.
It was the best.
Oh yeah, when we went through the birds and the waterfowls,
Beeline to that thing.
yeah, we'd go straight for it.
To it. And then, you know, they always had a petting zoo. Now that section is run by the CSU Ag Science Department. So all of the students who are in Ag Science come down and they run the education classes. They
Right.
develop the education classes. They do all of the field trips that come through. So all of those students for the first 3 weeks of January are not in school in Fort Collins. They are at and doing work at National Western.
I never
Exactly.
thought about the fact that CSU's the ag school and that's the connection, because
1,000%.
when I worked there, we would hire almost exclusively CSU kids, and not, you know, this is for selling Coke, right? It's not, and sandwiches.
You have to work National Western.
Because, but because they didn't go back to school yet.
No.
And so, you know, CU kids or Denver kids would all be going back to school after the first week of the stock show. And so that's not terribly helpful. But the CSU kids were, and now I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
light bulb. Okay.
So
Yep.
when I was there up at CSU, we would start the Tuesday after Martin Luther King Day now. So that was when we would start, and we would do a light slow roll into classes because all of the ag kids were still in National Western. The middle weekend is what is now Martin Luther King Day weekend. And then it ends that following Friday. So it's 4 or 5 days where it's a slow roll into classes, but
Okay.
all the ag kids
Yeah.
have to go down. Yeah. And a lot of them are showing anyway. They have animals they're
Well,
showing.
sure. But this was
So-
just normal CSU kids like trying to get work over the break, right?
Yeah.
And
So
get a few bucks.
Yeah.
And stock show is a great place to do that because man, you're working 14-hour days and getting paid by the hour.
I got some stories.
Yeah, I was going to say, and we're about to get into that.
Yeah.
But continuing our family connection, my Uncle Ken, before he passed away, was very much
He was a rodeo cowboy.
He was a rodeo cowboy. He was a cattleman. I learned things that I don't think my mom wanted me to know that I know how to know.
I mean, what's she going to do? She would have taught you to anyway.
Well, there's that. I mean,
Grandpa would have taught you.
Well, yeah, but this was well after Grandpa. They didn't have cattle anymore with Grandpa,
but Uncle Ken did.
Uncle Ken did. And I learned a little bit about taking care of pigs. I learned a little bit about taking care of chickens, and I learned a whole lot about taking care of cows, and also about how to bulldog, how to wrestle a steer,
How to wrestle it. I mean,
you
I know how to do that. I know how to do that.
It was wrestling a calf,
Yeah.
naturally, but I learned how to do that, and a lot of the time, the way I learned how to do it was not just being taught formally. It was go get him.
Great. Everybody else clears out of the.
Yeah, basically, yeah, they're all jumping out of the pen. It's like, go on, Chucky, go get him. Like, okay. So yeah, there was some of that. Of course, my grandfather, Ben Hickey, was involved with the feedlots. Also, he also worked at the rendering plant, so his connection
was a neighbor. Yeah.
Yeah, as a neighbor, it was very big because the sad part of a stock show is that there are going to be some casualties. Not a huge amount. They try their very best and they try their level best to make sure that mortality rate does not exist.
It is way low, though. I mean, it's less than 1%. I mean,
it is.
It's way low.
But there are the inevitables.
You've got to be prepared.
Yeah. And unfortunately, so those animals have to go somewhere.
Do you remember the story he told about the bull that he got, and then they were cutting it and calves fell out?
Not a bull.
It wasn't a bull. Well, it was, and Grandpa could sex an animal. He could tell.
Yeah.
He was, and so they got this bull, and it wasn't stock show. Animal, but they were getting an animal, and they were doing things to get it prepared for rendering, and cut it open, and it had calves, and everybody was a little bit surprised, and so
they were all very shocked to find that
it was a not true hermaphrodite, but it was XXY. So yeah. So because it was pregnant. He's got story. Grandpa had great stories.
There was a lot of stories.
I can't. Yeah, I mean, what he must have seen and experienced.
But yeah, unfortunately, that the animals that passed away at the show had to go somewhere, and of course they went across the river and across the street into the rendering plant. So, and that's where all of that happened. Anyway, let's talk about the work experience. And you said you didn't want to go first.
Well, on this I can.
You want to go first on this one?
I've probably got the earliest work experience because I started working. I worked there in the 80s. Early 80s, late 80s, early 90s. Because I worked for the concession company that I started up at Buffalo Bill's grave. The concession company that ran Buffalo Bills also ran concessions at the zoo and at Mile High Stadium, the t-shirts and whatnot, not the food. And then on the stadium side of Stock Show, we also did the t-shirts and things for, did I say Bronco games? I did. Okay.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. So this time of year, Broncos make the playoffs and have a home game and stock shows going on is a very busy time for this company. So when I started working at Stock Show, I just worked the retail. I worked at the National Western gift shop that was in the stadium area. So there are over 250 vendors at Stock Show, and they range from the food vendors and alcohol vendors that you would expect, through like I said, we were the official National Western store, so we had the shirts and hats and whatever. And then all the way up to like fine art and some really gorgeous stuff. And there's actually an official art exhibit there and all kinds of, I mean, it's so even if going out and seeing the live animals isn't your deal, there's plenty to see at Stock Show. So anyway, I worked at that and also worked one of the food stations. I remember that first year. I can't remember if I did that for 1 year or 2 years. I think 2 years. But one of those 2 years. So Stock Show season in January, it's either 50 degrees and which makes all of the fact that you've got thousands of animals together very odoriferous, fragrant. Or it's minus 30 and you're freezing. Mm-hmm. We weren't allowed to wear jackets, even though we were out so the merchants in the stadium just surround the outskirts of the stadium. So the barn doors are open all the time as they're moving in, people animals and people in and out for the shows. And so it is as cold inside as it is outside. The only thing is you don't have the wind. We weren't allowed to wear our jackets. And so what I ended up doing was wearing like a giant sweater underneath my official Stock Show shirt. And so, we're all looking like the Michelin men. And I remember standing on top of a metal milk crate and having a Bunsen burner underneath
that was
to
safe.
Try and keep my feet warm. Yeah. Or not a Bunsen. What is the Sterno, a can of Sterno.
Still even better.
Right? Yeah.
Because it's got no shut off.
Right. I know.
Open flame. Go for it.
And well, nowadays I'm sure that's not a thing, but in the 80s, nobody
Gen
cared.
X, let's go.
Right.
Come on.
Yeah. And so, when you began to feel your shoes stick, you're like, oh, I guess the crate's getting a little warm. Maybe I should
shut it off
for a minute. Just to try and not freeze to death down there.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Yeah, so those are those memories. And then I became one of the cashiers at the what's the main restaurant called that's in the Hall of Education?
Oh, what was that called?
Not the ranch house or something like
no.
that. We'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
The cattleman or
the cattleman was like the fancy, like where
that's the upper
executive types.
I was in the club.
Yeah.
You were in the club.
That's
I was just in the, where all of, where you and I get to go to get a really good barbecue sandwich or hamburger. Or
the hamburger.
Oh, yeah. The food there was really, really good.
Oh.
Even as an employee, I will say that. But yeah, I work the cash register and, the line is endless forever for hours at a time. And as to this day, I can count change super fast from any amount of money you give me because of that experience. And then after that, I worked the night shift to count all the money. So by that time I had moved down to working at the zoo, all summer and through college. It was one of my college jobs. And so during Stock Show, we would divide and conquer. And some of us would be over at Stock Show. Some of us would be at the zoo. Some of us would be at the Bronco game. Some of us would do both. And so overnight, counting all of the money that all of these various food concession and the gift shop and all of those things would be bringing in, plus the big cafeteria, in time for the, whatever it was, 4 or 5 a.m. bank pickup. But, and my experience with working back there and we were just in this tiny little, closet of a space behind the kitchen. And, two memories of that is just the hundreds of pounds of raw meat that were getting prepared to, all of the briskets and all of that stuff that were getting ready to go in the oven. Put me off meat for a few years, to say that.
I believe it.
To be honest.
I believe it.
Even though once it's cooking, it smells fantastic. Just that raw overwhelming raw meat smell was enough to put me off for a little while. And then the other memory I have is, KM.
Mm-hmm. That's who I work for as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Mr. KM.
Mr.
himself.
KM, Kevin McNicholas. One of the things that I talk about to this day is respecting a manager. I mean, he had a temper and probably still does, but I just don't have to experience it anymore. But one of the things he would do is when everyone was in the weeds in the kitchen, he's back there, he's still yelling at people, but he's stirring the beans or slicing the meat or doing whatever needs to, or pushing a mop around. I mean, he would do what it needed to be done, even as the owner of the company. And that was something that I always respected, that there was no job that was beneath him, even though, just he was trying to keep things moving. And as soon as someone could take over what he was doing, he would hand it over, of course, but he didn't just stand there and yell. He would help, which I thought I really respected that of him. So and he looked just like my dad. So everyone was very intimidated by him, and I never was, because it was my dad. And then my dad actually came in once when I was working at Buffalo Bills. He came in to visit me or drop something off for me or something, and everyone's flipping out because Cam's here, because Cam never came up to Buffalo Bill's grave. Cam is here, and I'm like, no, it's my dad. So
funny.
Yeah, and so it was a big false alarm for everybody else. But yeah, I don't think I appreciated the stock show. That was my first experience with stock shows. So unlike these two, I didn't grow up with it at all. So I either was living in South Denver, or then, we moved to Golden and Lookout Mountain. So I'm the mountain ski kid, which from previous episodes, and didn't do Eastern Plains stuff at all. So my first exposure to stock show was working at stock show. So it was quite overwhelming, to be honest. And now I appreciate it for what it is, and the history and everything that we've just been talking about. But at the time, it was a moneymaker for me over my college break.
That you did.
Yeah.
You made good money there. I made good money there. So
well, and I mean, the hourly wage wasn't that great, but the fact that you put in so many hours and didn't have time to spend it, right? So you came out of that 2.5 weeks with just whatever you got paid, because that's all you could do. You could barely sleep.
Yeah. So my experience, I also worked with KM, and I had taken this 2-week job because I was leaving one and needed just something, a stopgap and a filler. And I got a job as a server in the club. So the club is where all of the National Western members go to have their meal, separate and away from
the rest of
regular crowd.
From us.
But the cool thing is that the club is also where a lot of the big money deals happened. So all of the members who are these ranchers are no joke when it comes to businessmen and businesswomen and business people. They are smart, and it's a big business. And I'm talking million billionaires sitting in this room ordering pie. If you know, it's all about the pie there. But if they liked you, this is what was cool. If you were a good server and they liked you, they'd request you. And then it was, here's a 50, go get me a drink, keep the change.
Nice.
Here's 100, thanks for your time. Like that, and pocket tips that we pocketed. Like it was just, here, I'm going to give you $200, just keep my glass full. And I was like, okay. And so it was amazing. And they were and I'm not saying like that happened to everybody and they were that free with the money. It's just that they understand that the people that are working there are working hard, and they wanted to help reward it.
Exactly.
And it was that was the spirit that was intended. It wasn't, here, I'm feeling sorry for you. It was like, here, I got you. And
they
it was
understood.
amazing. It was so
they
fun.
understood, and they appreciated it.
They appreciated it a lot.
That's why.
One of the cool stories I have is like, I'm the big science geek in there. And this was at a time when Wagyu was just coming into Colorado and coming into National Western. And I was taking care of a table with 2 gentlemen who were bringing in Wagyu to Colorado and them wanting to crossbreed it. So they were sitting there talking genetics and talking all this stuff in there. And I was kind of like listening. They're like, you got this? I'm like, oh yeah. And I was like, so what is it? I started asking some questions and they were like, great, here's another $100. I was like,
Okay.
I was like, okay.
Wow.
But it was really cool to be on that science side of it and the animal science side of it and understanding like, okay, like this is where a personification of that degree those kids are getting comes into hand, because all of my friends who were ag science majors, like this is their life. This is what they were going to do. So it was neat to see that in full function. But yeah, being in the club was it was fun. It was great.
Very different experience.
Very different
than what
experience.
I had.
Mine was just, you had the big run at lunch and then we were done at 3. And then so from 6:45, 7 o'clock in the morning till 3:30, we all got a meal. We all got to eat. So I got to eat that, a free lunch every day. It was great. But it was hard work. I don't think I'll ever want to be a server ever again in my life.
And you know what amazed me is a lot of the older coworkers that I worked with, by older, I mean they were no longer college kids. This was their 2-week vacation from their normal job.
And they did it. Yeah.
And they would work these, probably 80 hours a week for 2 weeks, and then would go back to their regular job. And I thought, wow, that's dedication. But they loved working stock show.
It's great. And I will tell you this, my little 2-week transition position, getting me out of what I was in money wise, set me up for 4 months.
Wow. Well, without
having to work.
You definitely had a different experience than I did, but
was insane. And we did tip share, so it wasn't like I was walking out with my big old wad of cash, but it was enough, and it was amazing. It was what I needed at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So and it was neat to see the business side of it. I think that's something that people don't appreciate of what happens these 2 weeks in Denver at this space, is that there's big, huge business happening that will impacts these people financially for years to come, and the industry that it's a part of. And it's really important to understand that it's not just tourism,
right?
That it is a legit business deal, that space for that agricultural business to happen.
And I know from working with KM for the time that I did that this doesn't just happen during stock show. Like that's the culmination of it, but there are business meetings of National Western all year long.
Mm-hmm.
And over in that complex, don't ask me where, the mysterious place where these things, the Illuminati back office.
I will put a picture of the building that it does happen in, and it's that brick building.
No, I know the building. Yeah. I just don't know where in the building.
It's not much.
It's on the 2nd or 3rd floors.
Yeah.
And that's where all the offices of the stock exchange are.
Well, yeah, that's true. Oh, of course, that makes sense.
Where you picked up your paycheck.
Yeah. No, I handed out the paychecks. They came to me, and then I hand out.
Yeah.
It's where you got your paycheck. But those folks that would come, and this was their 2-week vacation, and I noticed this too after multiple years of working there, is even on the farmhand or ranch hand worker side of folks that were there, it was the same folks year after year, and you got to know them.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to know them over the 2 weeks for sure, because they,
but
Billy always came in at 5:15 in the morning before he would start, working his cows. But over the years, it was always the same. And it was like a big reunion for all of them to greet each other.
Yeah.
And, so that was fun to see too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's something we didn't really talk about at the beginning of this, especially with all the history, is that this started as a money-making venture.
Yeah.
This was business to begin with.
Yeah.
I hope that we got that across, because we were talking about breeding. We were talking about livestock itself of range cattle. We were talking about, all of the things that are involved with that. And as far as buying and selling, that's what this was all about.
And to the science side of it, the ranch side of it, is selling and mixing of the population. So you had a pure population. You weren't overbreeding or inbreeding your own stock. You were exchanging animals to keep a healthy set of animals.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because,
And that, go ahead.
because you don't need everything from the same genetic line.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
ruins it. So
Yeah. So that's exactly how it started. And then it became a commercial business of, opening it up to the public and doing the rodeos and selling and having the merchants there and all of that stuff. But
If that's what you meant by commercial. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. As opposed to business, it's business to customer. And it's still, so now it's kind of a moneymaker on two avenues, right?
On several different.
Yeah.
well, my business, the next 2 weeks, we're going to be full because
it brings in all kinds
people
of
from the region, and they want something to do. They are tired of their animals, so come to the aquarium. And we're just because the Christmas holiday is over, we got 2 more weeks of stock show coming up.
That's right.
It's gonna be we're gonna be busy.
Well, and we talked about last week or before the end of the year when we did our Christmas episode of leaving our Christmas lights up through stock show, because that is the end of our tourist season for this time of year.
Exactly.
In the Denver area, at least.
Right.
Mountains still have
a lot, but as far as the urban center goes, this is the stock show is the last hurrah really for this season.
The winter season.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And if you happen to be in Denver in mid-January and aren't involved in stock show, do not go to a steakhouse for dinner if you want to eat, because they will be packed.
25-mile radius, 50-mile radius of the town of Denver.
Here too.
Don't do it.
No.
And also, if you drive I-25 or I-70 on a regular basis, keep your eyes open during these 2 weeks, because inevitably a cow or a horse gets out and gets on the interstate.
Yes. It happens several times.
And we get to watch on the news all of the police, and all of these police cars with lights on chasing this cow down the highway.
Okay, and now we're going to, speaking of cows and roads.
Yes.
The parade.
Okay. The parade, yes.
We need to talk about the parade.
So this is the Thursday
the parade.
before. Yay. It happens the Thursday before the opening day, and it starts at Union Station and goes east on 17th to Wine Coop. Hangs a left onto Wine Coop.
No.
Wine Coop's at Union Station.
It starts around 18th and Wine Coop walks over to 17th. You make a left turn on 17th and head
right up 17th.
Okay.
And then heads east, and it's is it Lammer? One of the streets. And it actually walks all of the animals straight into National Western Complex. So one of the streets, I can't remember what it is. We'll look it up. One of the streets that goes straight in, and they do a cattle drive, and it's a donated herd. I can't remember where the herd comes from, but they march the cows up. They do have longhorn steer, which I think is hilarious because that's so not Colorado.
I know. As you were reading through the history, it was all shorthorn and not longhorn.
And I'm like, but when you think cattle drive, you think longhorn steer. Okay, whatever. That's very Texas.
Yeah.
Colorado, we have them for show. And then all of the National Western Board is on wagons, and they bring the wagons up. We have the Western Airs with their horses, and those kids get to ride in the parade. The 2 parades I've been to, they're not been bands because they have the animals out because they're the horses don't like a lot of that noise. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of horse groups that run through, but it's very short. It's not a very long parade, but it kicks off the festivities by going up Union Station up 17th to street directly into. It's really cool. I loved going the 2 times I went. It was a great way to be very Denver and very traditional, and it's really cool that way. So I think I'm the only one of the 3 of us who's been to the parade.
Yeah, I've never been.
So I will put a map of the parade route up here, and it starts on 17th and Wine Coop and goes southeast all the way down to Glenarm.
That's the road.
And then it makes a left turn on Glenarm over to 18th, and then it heads back northwest back to Wine Coop, and then you make a right turn back to the Stock Show Fair.
So it is Wine Coop that gets you back in there, but with the stadium, with the baseball stadium, you can't go straight in anymore. Like on Wine Coop, you have to jiggy jog around. So it's a fun one. It's a cool parade. Like I said, it's not a long parade. but everything moves slow. I mean, you're driving animals, so
Yeah, and
it's
hence the joke I said earlier about how it was back in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
so it's a good one. I like the parade a lot. It's a fun, and that fact that it happens this Thursday.
Yeah.
A lot of things happening this Thursday, but if you
I
get a
would
chance to
love-
look at it.
I would love to be able to go. I would love to be able to take some video of it.
You can ride the train in.
Yeah, but I can't do it this year.
Okay, I mean you can ride the train directly in and just stand at
That's
Union
true.
Station.
Yeah, that I could probably get down there that way.
Mhm.
Maybe we'll see what happens. I don't know. No promise. No promises made. Anyway, the parade step off is at noon,
Mhm.
and it is one of the bigger deals in Denver. It is not like the Parade of Lights.
Hallelujah!
No, it's during the day.
Oh, the Parade of
It's
Lights.
during the day. But it's cool. It's a
Yes.
fun one.
Oh, the Parade of Lights. Oh,
I like the stock show parade. It's cool.
it's much better. Yes. That pretty much wraps.
Well, I have a question.
Oh. Yeah.
So, fondest memory of stock show.
Oh, wow.
I will tell you mine while you two think. So I alluded to this before that this National Western has a big story and a big play in my health journey.
Hmm.
So we figured out that I was asthmatic when we were at the rodeo. I was 5. Now, traditionally, I never really appreciated the calf roping. I thought it was mean and horrible, and I always rooted for the cow and not the cowboy because I wanted the calves to get out of it. So I would cry. So I would be rooting for the cows. Well, I had fallen asleep, and we were up at the rafters. So to this day, I don't do indoor rodeos very well. I'm allergic to everything. And I'd fallen asleep. I woke up to the calf roping, but I'm in a full-on asthma attack at this point. My lips are blue, and Grandpa's there, and I wake up and I start bawling. And this is what I remember. This is what I remember from my perspective. I'm crying uncontrollably because the cows are getting hurt. I can't breathe. My lips are blue, and Grandpa's freaking out. And Mom's like, okay, we'll take her to the doctor tomorrow, kind of thing. But that's how we figured out that I was asthmatic, and I was all up in my allergens, and we had to figure it out. And lo and behold,
Here you
I'm
are.
asthmatic, and I'm allergic to all of the things.
Yeah, she was asthmatic and allergic to everything. That is at the stock show.
Everything, including the animals. So that was that. So that's my, it's not, it is a fondest memory because it impacted how I do things and how I function and how I modify my life. Obviously, I haven't stopped going or doing the things I do. I just figure out how to make it work for myself. So,
Well, and I remember you saying it wasn't National Western Rodeo, but we went to a rodeo and it was indoor, but it was right after COVID. So we were all still wearing masks. And you're saying that, wow, what a great advantage. No one's looking at me weird
anymore.
because I can wear a mask and enjoy an indoor stock show a little bit better because you can wear a mask now
yeah.
without people looking at you weird.
So that's my big memory. So who's next? Who's got a big memory?
I don't have a really big memory other than enjoying going once we went with Kat and as a little girl and seeing how excited she was with all of the animals and I guess my other I enjoy the mutton busting because it's hard not to. So what mutton busting is it is 3 to 7 year olds riding
Slapped on the back of a sheep.
Yep. And they race these sheep from one end to the other.
And you got to hang
You
on.
gotta hold on
You
for the
gotta hang
longest.
on
Whoever
for
holds on the
dear life.
longest.
Yeah. And so it's mixed sex at that age, and so last time we went, a little girl won. So it was adorable.
Yeah, I can't remember her name.
I don't
I want
know.
to say Haley or something
Like that, but
Yeah.
she
Sure.
was so cute. Oh my god.
She was great.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so there's a lot from when I was little. I talked about being at the auction with Grandpa.
Yeah, I was gonna say
and,
that.
Chucky,
biggie.
don't keep your hands down.
Mm-hmm.
I remember walking through the dealer stalls in the Coliseum
Hmm.
after the rodeo
Mhm.
and getting a cork gun of all the stupid things.
Mhm.
You know, I got
Yeah.
a lever action cork gun. That was fun. There's nothing really that stands out in my mind. There is one thing that stands out in my mind from when I was little, and it was watching the rodeo. And in the rodeo, they would always have this one portion where a little corgi or Jack Russell or something was pulling a chuck wagon.
Yes.
Okay. And it always reminded me of the chuck wagon dog food commercial.
Commercial. Yeah.
Because a little chuck wagon come tearing out of the house, the dog would be chasing after it, and it'd come running around and go right back in the cabinet. The dog would stand there waiting for food. Okay, but with this, the chuck wagon with the dog pulling the chuck wagon would make the circuit of the entire arena and then go running back in. And that was one of my favorite things. I also kind of liked it when they had the little monkey riding the dog,
Mhm.
but I also found that to be absolutely horrible later on in life because I figured out exactly how that poor monkey had to stay on the dog.
You got taped on it. Or
Yeah,
like
they
strapped
it down
Yeah, he wasn't
hard,
allowed.
and it was just rocking and rolling, and the dog was taking
Aw.
off. And
Yeah.
Poor
Yeah.
thing.
Poor, poor animal. But anyway, so it was the dog pulling the little wagon, covered wagon, so that was great, or the little stagecoach, that was fantastic. But the other main key memory for me would be Cat meeting the calf.
Yeah.
That would be the core memory, because it was this little bitty thing meeting this great big little bitty thing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Bonding.
is
Creating a bond.
two juveniles,
Yeah.
and it was great. It was fun. So I think that would be it. That would be the only thing. I can't think of anything else.
There you go. Well, cool. I just, we've have this good history, and there's a lot of things. And I mean, I think fundamentally it's where you can't not think of Grandpa and not think of Stock Show. Like they're so ingrained together, and it was such a big thing. And it was his favorite time of year. So, getting a little sentimental, if Grandpa had
Yeah, of course.
the cows, and his influence on my journey of being in the animal care profession is huge. So that's a big part of it.
Exactly.
You learn a lot. He had such good knowledge about those animals and what to do, and he shared it, and it was great. So,
well, and I think that
Yay.
pretty much wraps up
Yeah.
what we were trying to do. And here I am desperately trying to find music to play us out.
you can add that later.
I can, but it's more fun to do it this way. And I think I just found the one I want to play. And
Well, if you are in Denver this time of year and you want to go to National Western, you can buy tickets online.
Mm-hmm.
They are always available online, so you can do that. They're available at the box office. It's easier to buy them online, so you know that you get tickets. It is a popular event. It can sell out quickly, especially the rodeos.
Yeah.
Rodeos are a different price than the stock show itself, so if you want to buy a pair, make sure you pay attention to what you're getting so you can get rodeo tickets. But I recommend going and trying it. I know that it can be a little bit of a controversial topic, but
sure.
agriculture is important, and it ties into everything that we do. And it's not just about our food; it's the clothes we wear, it's the medicines we take, it is the recreational things we do. So, agriculture has a very big purpose and place in all of our lives, and it affects everybody and everything. So, we need to remember that and respect it.
All right. So on that note, so we are done for this week. Join us again in 2 weeks. Remember that we are on Spotify now. We are also on YouTube. We have not left YouTube. You can catch us on either platform. And in the next 2 weeks, the next episode, I think we're going to talk about the history of City Park.
Okay.
So we'll be talking about the museum, and we'll be talking about the zoo, and we'll be talking about the golf course. But anyway, yeah. So City Park next time, and thank you again for joining us, and we will catch you guys in 2 weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.